Okay, we're live.
Awesome.
Hello and welcome to Fermenting Opinions. I am your host, David Papiden. Co-host James McVeigh is not with us tonight, but we are, when we're together, Fermenting Opinions, the podcast in search of a more palatable political ferment. Today is April 25th, 2018. This is Season 2, Episode 8, and we have with us AJ Holmes and Tyler White. And what we're here for today is AJ has decided to run for state representative in Tennessee 64th District. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. So AJ, first of all, tell us about yourself.
All right. Well, Columbia, Tennessee, born and raised. I went to Columbia Academy, Columbia State Community College. My parents and grandparents have owned businesses in the county for decades. It's been nice growing up here. I mean, I've seen lots of changes in and around this county throughout my life. I'm a triplet. I come from a big family with strong roots in this area. But when I'm not, now kind of recently campaigning, I've been doing a good bit of that here lately. When I'm not doing that, I regularly am busy with photography projects or traveling. In the last 3 years, myself and Tyler White have traveled to 41 states.
Oh, wow.
Making photos and talking to people, exploring the country.
Gotcha. And that's what you sort of do by trade, right, as a photographer?
It is.
That's cool. How long have you been doing that?
I've been taking photos since my family gave me a camera in 2006. So
cool.
Mostly shooting film. I did graduate from Middle Tennessee State University.
Oh, so did I. Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So with a bachelor's in photography and business administration. But once I graduated, I came back to Columbia, back to what I knew, and been focusing a bit on traveling here, some on the side, but recently decided to add a little bit, make my corner of life a little bit bigger and put a little bit more on the plate, so to speak.
Well, it seems like you're certainly doing that right now. So you have decided to throw your hat into what I would think for someone who's sort of new to the world of politics.
Sure.
That's a pretty big ring.
It is.
So what made you decide to run in the first place?
Oh, well, there's a bit of a story for that.
Okay.
I was at my parents' home one evening here in town, and was just scrolling through Facebook, which kind of lends itself to
Anger?
a whole spectrum of opportunities, anger included. And I was on a Facebook page for our current state rep of District 64, and I was reading some posts.
She's not Voldemort. You can mention her by name.
State Rep Sheila Butt.
There you go.
For Tennessee State House District 64. From time to time, I like to see what our elected officials have to say. I think it's important. I think what they say should be checked. We should be able to measure their claims. So it's February 22nd. I'm on Facebook. I go to Sheila Butt's page. I see some claims about campaign spending from Planned Parenthood and the NRA that were just quite easily proven to be very far from the truth.
Outraged, you send it to me on Messenger. Like, what is this?
I did. I mean, I just thought.
Would you say this was an example of fake news?
Well, it's kind of ironic because it really was to me.
I don't mean fake news. I mean real fake news.
Literally fake. Literally fake. Real fake news.
Yeah.
Let's get oxymoronic with
right?
it. But no, I mean, what it appeared to me to be was this idea of, well, let's skirt around the facts, let's skirt around the truth, and let's advance an agenda here. Which is what so many people on the right want to regularly accuse the fake news of doing. So I found it kind of rich that folks on the conservative end of the spectrum were sharing things that were quite easily misproven. So I commented, which is something I usually regret doing, but I figured I would engage, and I just gave several sources, including the Congressional Budget Office. Like, let's get some nonpartisan sources here. And
what was the reaction to that? Anything from her in particular? Or?
Up until I was checking it for a few days.
Okay.
typically when I comment on Miss Sheila's posts, I never get a response. Or if I do, it totally skirts from actually addressing the question, the problem. So, though that night, before my comment got buried and a bunch of others, it had the most positive support of any comment on her thread. I was very happy to see that. You know, of course, it wasn't, I guess, it was just an interesting moment, because I was thinking, man, there are folks reading this that agree with what I have to say here. There are folks that are also outraged by this, what I quite literally assumed and accused of being an abuse of her office. You are an elected official. Anything you say or do, this is an endorsement. Whether you're sharing a quote from somebody else or, you know, a source from what you think might be unbiased, impartial, you need to do your homework. And I took it as an abuse of the power, an abuse of the office. I was totally outraged. And the next morning when the Election Commission opened, I sought a petition for Tennessee State House District 64.
I remember getting a call that night. He's like, Tyler. And I'm like, what? It's like, I think I'm going to run for office. I'm going to go get a petition tomorrow.
That's awesome. And by the way, you are the campaign manager and treasurer?
Yes.
Very good, very good.
So it's been a bit of a whirlwind, but
yeah, I can imagine.
When you just got to respond to your convictions, though, and that's what I did.
I hear you. Yeah, I can appreciate the frustration. It's actually funny. My personal anecdote about that. I commented on her page a couple times a few years ago, and one time, this is really interesting to me. I asked her what she was going to do. This is in the height of the whole like anti-Muslim fervor that was brought up by hate blogger Kathy Henners and all this stuff. Sure. It happened a few years back here in Columbia, and Sheila had said something on her her official page, right? And I asked her what she intended to do to defend the rights of religious minorities, and then she blocked me from commenting. And that was it in terms of my interactions with the person who is my elected official.
Sure.
So I can appreciate you maybe want to take a shot at the title there.
Well, one thing I'll say about what happened to you there being blocked, whenever I announced that I was running, I had a whole bunch of people message me, "Hey, I'm on Sheila Butt's block list. I'm glad someone's running here that supports my opinions." I'm like, so many.
I think is a dereliction of duty to begin with.
It absolutely
You're a
is.
state representative. You're there to represent all of your constituents.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. And
if you block them,
tuck tail and run from any argument.
Yeah. Don't get me started about Donald Cook. But yeah, I'm not going there. Let's stay focused on what you guys are doing here.
Sure.
But yeah, she's a commissioner, and I don't like her as a human being. Anyway, let's see here. So that's why you're running. I think that's a really good motivation. It motivates a lot of my own political involvement, is seeing the way our officials sort of ignore anybody who's not part of their base, right, and their partisanship. No, I totally get that. So that's what you're doing here. That's why you're running. And so I guess my next question, and to me it's the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
No pun intended, right? This is a really red area, right? It's a red district, and you are running as a Democrat, right?
I am.
So what are your concerns there, and how do you intend to reach across the aisle, essentially?
Okay.
How are you going to have somebody not shut down immediately once they hear that you're a Democrat?
Well, I'll say a couple of things here, and Tyler, I'm sure, would be able to opine on this as well, but I think that it's historically been a red district in the last several elections because around here, Republicans come out and vote. I think we have a large percentage of folks around here. Quite a few folks aren't even registered to vote, and then of the folks that are registered, there's a huge percentage that don't come out to vote. We're also kind of going to be down on the luck here as well because it's a midterm election. So what I would say is, yes, it is red historically in terms of voting patterns. But I do think, in light of what's happened in 2016 with the election of Trump, I do think with Phil Bredesen running at the top of the ticket here, the Democratic base, what it was, what it could become, is about to flourish. So I'm hoping that we'll really have a new opportunity here to not only electrify and invigorate the current base of Democrats in the region, but let folks know, hey, this is an opportunity for all voices to come to the table. Let's try to set the titles aside. And in terms of coming across the aisle, you know, the day I formally announced I was running, once I had the petition, the signature from the Murray County Election Commission that confirmed I was running and on the ballot, I didn't want to say anything until then. I immediately started messaging friends of mine that were Republicans. Like, let's talk. You know, a lot of my family are Republicans. It's not a bad word to me. I don't think less of folks who are Republicans. That doesn't matter so much to me. I want to work. The least common denominator here is that we're all living, breathing human beings. We all have passions. I want to hear about those passions. What do you think District 64 needs?
And what do you hear?
I've heard a whole host of things. I'd say the most regularly discussed issues are things that we already see in the news and local media and state media all the time, which is that, you know, our schools are struggling. Certain schools in the district are at capacity or very near it. We have also schools in the district that are in dire need of repair and upkeep and have been that way for, in some cases, decades. So that is a huge concern for folks. I've had several people, Democrat and Republican, say teachers' pay needs to be increased. This is something I proudly support. But another huge thing for this district, folks, I think, are really starting to become scared of this tide that's rising, this commercial push from our northern neighbors, Williamson and Davidson counties. There's so much commercial influence on its way. Our roads are not keeping up. Our schools are not keeping up. You know, we're one of the fastest growing towns. I mean,
this was a sentiment that occurred to me when I first moved to the area about 10 years ago. We talked about it a little bit before we came on. And one of the things that I kept hearing from people who were involved in local politics is that, well, you know, Murray County, this is the dimple of the universe kind of thing. We want to keep things small and quaint and keep things the way they are. And the whole time I was sitting and watching, you know, Spring Hill and Franklin to our north, and then, you know, Mount Pleasant, which is, I guess, southeast or something like that, is a little bit to the south of us. Even they sort of growing and outpacing us, you know, while not much was happening until maybe 2-3 years ago. I've really started to see development. Then it seems like sort of the inevitability of that, what you're talking about, the commercialization coming into the area. Like, how do you plan to respond to that? And let me frame this further. How do you plan to respond to that in a way that, say, Sheila Butt, for example, did not respond to it?
So I think there are a few pretty lofty goals that I have. There are also a few that are more manageable. And the biggest issue is going to be after you make a claim or a legislative suggestion, how do you pay for it? So I understand that question. It makes total sense. We can only spend what we have. So what I would suggest is looking to what our northern neighbors have done, both good and bad. And I think one of the good things that Williamson County has done was kind of this introduction and this amping up of an impact fee. And this impact fee was going really, from what I've researched, I was reading a bit about this earlier as well in the Tennessean, say what you will about that publication, but you know, they're estimated that when their impact fee program gets to its full peak, they're going to be bringing in an extra $25 million a year, and it's going towards education in the county. That's some serious money.
Yeah.
So, and this is also when, you know, impact fees are typically associated with new construction and development. So right now, we got to look at that and we can say, hey, Williamson County is still expanding hugely. Okay, this is still a massively developed region. Columbia has a whole lot more room to expand, though. Now we're kind of this fresh canvas, and we're right on Highway 31. I mean, it is coming, and a big part of it is already here. These grassroots, this foundation is here. So we have a huge opportunity if we could consider an impact fee on development. And maybe we tailor this specifically.
How is that implemented? Just to clarify, how is an impact fee implemented? How does that kick in essentially?
Well, kicks in like it did in Williamson County, this was a very highly contested thing. I mean, you got a lot of moving parts involved here. Your commission's involved. Your state rep's going to be involved. The folks that lead your congressional district are going to want to have a say in this too. I mean, this is really what this comes down to, though, David, is that I think folks are worried about will they get reelected. And, you know, people hear, oh, fee. They hear fee or tax. And
I was about to say, is this a fancy word for taxes?
This is not a fancy word for taxes. This isn't something that's going to be a huge burden on the average civilian. Okay? You know, this isn't going to be anything like a state income tax. This is something that folks who are wanting to come into this area and develop and build, well, they would pay a little bit more to come in and do that. I mean, Williamson County, you're looking at, like I said, $25 million a year. That's serious money for schools. They're going to make a huge impact with this.
Gotcha. So I guess, correct me if I'm not thinking about this the right way, but say like a company, something like that comes in, and instead of what I saw before, like, you know, around like 2008 when I came to the area, we were throwing tax incentives at anyone just to come and build here, saying, oh, you're going to be here, you're going to pay an impact fee to be here, instead of, you know, basically all the way on the other side of, we're going to throw tax incentives at you. Sure. Or maybe there's some little bit of both.
Well, you know, I don't know. I would love to investigate it further, see how you really cut the pie into this, because, and I'll be honest with you, getting the ball rolling on figuring out how you pay for this, it's something new for me, but I can tell you that in the previous 8 years, that ball hasn't been rolling at all. So,
I was going to just chip in here.
Go ahead.
The other purpose for having the impact fee to begin with is to not necessarily curb the growth, but control it. Because right now, if you grow at a rate, say, that Murfreesboro is growing at, where you have 120,000 plus people crammed into a town that's not built to sustain.
Yeah, it was heavily populated. Absolutely. At 80,000 when you guys probably went to college a little bit after I did. But like it was a big town then. Yeah,
traffic all the time.
Yeah,
and if you do the tax incentives and you say, hey, gates are open, come on in, build wherever you want. Right. And all these companies just flood in, and you don't have the infrastructure to sustain that, it's going to be a mess.
This is true.
Yeah.
Now, I do think Columbia has some pretty strong bones, though, and let me clarify with that and say that I remember several years ago when Neapolis, Thompson Station, these areas were starting to really begin to develop, you know, Spring Hill, and even in downtown Franklin, all along 31. In a lot of these areas, that major parts of this road are 2 lanes. And I remember thinking, being so grateful when I was driving to and from Franklin on 31. I was grateful for the time that I was on the 4-lane portion in Murray County, and grateful when I hit it when I came back. Like, the road's going to expand, there are turn lanes where they need to be. Thank you.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Thank you, planners. Like, and I remember thinking then, it's kind of flipped. Because back then, I mean, my whole life, I remember 31 pretty much always being 4 lanes. Having good medians, having dedicated turn lanes in parts. They've added more traffic signals over the years. I mean, in this regard, we have adapted with our changing environment. Perhaps even adapted sooner than you could say it was necessary, but I'm glad we did it.
Well, you have to plan for the future.
You have to plan for
growth, yeah.
Right. So, but that road aside, I think there are several other roads around here that are in dire need of expansion. I mean, we really need to make Bear Creek Pike all the way out to I-65. It really needs to be 4 lanes. You know, we need some more dedicated turn lanes. I think. Yeah,
it would be a great relief off of 31 because I travel that sort of region like all the time.
Sure.
Like 4 to 5 days a week that I'm up through there. So like, yeah,
it's a bit of a nightmare.
It's ugly pretty quickly. Yeah,
it absolutely does. So I guess full circle here.
Yeah,
the impact fee I think is intimidating for folks, but I also think there's a lot of misinformation out there. I think, like I said, people hear fee and they immediately think, oh, this is a tax. This is something that I'm not going to be able to afford. This is something that, if we could get this implemented, it could help really, quite literally and very quickly restructure our schools. More funding for classrooms even. I mean, classroom budgets where teachers aren't dipping out of their own pockets. There's home.
It would be great to not have a statewide like teacher strike like we've seen in West Virginia. I think Arkansas
and
right?
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. That's what it is.
Arizona is now talking about it. So look, we need to realize that we have a whole host of issues here. And you said earlier, you asked, what are the issues folks around here are asking me about? And yeah, overwhelmingly, it's roads, it's schools. These are things people are concerned about. The third one is the third biggest. I don't even know. It would probably end up being tied for first or second place. Is our issues with healthcare.
Are you saying we should have taken the expansion?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm saying that we shouldn't be giving. I mean, money that's essentially been gifted, and we're just sending it down the river to other places.
Yeah, just because it had Obama's name on it.
Right.
That's but that's my part of it.
Well, no, I really think that's part of it. I think folks need to realize, hey, if this is a bill or if this is funding that can help real Tennesseans, these folks that they heavily rely on these Medicaid dollars. In some places, exclusively rely on it.
Gotcha.
We're having rural hospitals that are talking about closing, some that have closed. And pretty soon you're going to be able to piece this together and say, man, without this expansion and these hospitals closing and these people not having access to care, person goes into cardiac arrest and their nearest hospital now is an hour further away.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
How does that go for them?
Yeah.
People are literally going to die. And I
know
huge
issue about rural hospitals, especially.
It is. So we really need to respond to that in a serious way.
The dog. I knew the dog was going to try to ruin the podcast. All right, we are right at 20. We'll say about 23. You guys just smoke them if you got them for a second. I'm gonna let her out or figure out what's going on.
Go ahead.
So this is a thing that will get edited out. So, Cindy,
Pretty girl.
What up? How many questions we got left? I feel like we've talked about a lot.
Okay. This is the benefit of anyone who's watching live will be like, okay, that was funny. But like, and anybody who isn't watching live, we'll say right around 24. We'll say 20 or so. Okay, and I can just edit this whole, yeah, right. Take that whole section out, so no one's gonna really see that.
Cool.
But anyway, so we were talking about essentially Medicaid expansion, the fact that we decided as a state that we don't like that because of Obama, and then rural hospitals close, and there's an impact on the health of Tennesseans. Okay, so that's terrible. What would you do about it if you were elected?
Well, what I would do about it is, first and foremost, I would petition these politicians voting against this and really try to get down and figure out why. What's the problem here? And I would also see what we could do to secure some of this funding that we're seemingly, it would seem, is essentially just being shipped off. I mean, I think healthcare for Tennesseans, regardless of the camp you're in, regardless of the county you're in, this is important. These are folks that, they look at this and they think, oh, Obama was a part of this, or it's the Affordable Care Act, this, that, and the other. Okay, the least common denominator here, politics aside, partisanship aside, is that for some folks, these dollars are life or death. And it sounds like a totally hyperbolic.
It's really not melodramatic at all.
No,
this is real.
This is just it. So we're not talking about should we move James K. Polk's tomb to Columbia. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about should the Polk home be a national park. We're talking about should this person, should this community have a hospital an hour closer to them or not? Should these people, if, say, Sue goes into cardiac arrest, should she have a fair shot at living because the expansion provided for medical infrastructure in her region? I would argue, yeah, Sue should live.
Absolutely.
And I would argue these folks that would rather spend their time kind of quibbling over whether or not James K. Polk's tomb is in Columbia, or should this be a national park, or should we put a monument to, I heard something the other day. We're talking about having a monument on the state capitol grounds to, I believe it was unborn children.
Yeah, I heard about that. That's,
and,
I think if I could, I guess, chime in, you don't have to say anything either way, but there's legislatively, there's so much just red meat being tossed at the base by legislators who are aware that it's an election year.
Right.
When you have things like, a resolution about affirming that our liberties come from God, about moving the Polk tomb to Columbia, about monument to the unborn, all these things. These are not things that are really useful at all. Towards what are, like you said, you reached out. What are the needs of everybody, in your district and really across the state?
Well,
most of us really all have the same needs in terms of what we're expecting our government to to provide, because that's what this is in the social contract, right? And the stuff that they're doing in the legislature is none of it.
Look, I'll say this. While these smoke screens come up all around us, wait, you want to pause for a second?
Yeah, we can pause again. Okay. I feel like she's gonna want in and out like 15 times now. This damn dog. Normally she waits till like, let's see. Oh no, it's a 28. Let's check it out there. I don't know if she's barking to come in or she's barking to make noise. I'm going to shut the door and see
if it's a little.
If she continues to scratch at the door, then it's not going to stop. But if sometimes she'll just go out and just bark and carry on. And she just does that, and sometimes I let her do it at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sure my neighbors hate me.
Oh no, they love you.
But okay, 28, 40. Okay. There's only so much I can do about that.
I get you.
But anyway, you were saying.
Yeah, so I think while so many other folks are kind of playing to the base, appealing to emotion entirely, I'm trying to do some real homework in this district. Today I spent a good deal of my morning on the phone with different folks from different agencies around town. Everyone right now is concerned about landfill expansions in the district.
I heard about that. Our running for county mayor, Andy Ogles, who I am generally not a fan of his politics, but one of the things that he was actually talking about is this. It's near the Trace, is it?
Chickasaw Trace.
Chickasaw Trace. There is a landfill there,
right.
And I don't know why they put those next to each other, but I guess there's talk of expansion, and that he's actually against that. And even though I'm otherwise not aligned with him politically, I was like, yeah, he's kind of right. That's kind of, we don't want that here.
Well,
like,
I found it interesting that he came out with that position because I guess just because when I was reading the petition that he started, it was talking about like it even, I believe at one point alluded to recycling and being green, and I thought, well, I was kind of happy because folks who are definitely more on the conservative end of the scale, I'm like, all right, great, maybe we can come to the table on this. But then I also realized there's been a lot of talk about this issue, and it seems like the expansion's happening regardless. So petitions are great, and appealing to folks is great. Let's get people fired up about these real issues. But let's realize now that since the landfill is almost undoubtedly going to expand, let's figure out what we can do to maybe lessen the future burden of our solid waste around here. And let's put these words into action. So I spent about 40 minutes on the phone today with Columbia Public Works. I've had to call a few times here lately and leave voicemails. I know these men and women are busy, and I'm sympathetic to that. But I also know that folks are asking me tough questions. They require detailed answers. And so I just got in touch with. I spoke with Jeff DeWire with City.
And he is who?
Believe he would be the assistant director of Public Works for Columbia.
Okay.
Forgive me if that title is incorrect. It's been a long day.
Okay.
And it was a long phone call. But chiefly my concerns were about the Recycle Columbia program. I was learning that right now 26% residences in city limits participate in the program. I thought, man, that's actually a pretty good number of folks. One truck facilitates the whole town.
Oh, wow.
And it's either one or two employees handle the entire Recycle Columbia program. And right now, I asked Mr. Dwyer, I said, are you at your saturation point? Are you almost at capacity for this service? And he said, absolutely. You know, right now, they've paid with the Recycle Columbia program. They've secured monies for their bins and their truck through grants, which is awesome. Like, this is great. Let's brainstorm effective ways to fund these things. But one truck for a city that's growing as fast as Columbia.
What's our size right now? Do you know?
I mean,
off the top of your head?
For the city of Columbia, I want to say it's upper mid 30s, 30,000, 30, it's probably like 37 or 38,000. I'd have to check again.
Sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a growing town.
Sure.
I just found it interesting when he said how much of a percentage of folks in city limits were already recycling. But there's also this huge percentage of people out there that don't realize that the Recycle Columbia program is free and available to anyone in city limits.
Now, see, that's something. This will be the second time I've been corrected on this. Essentially, that at first I thought, well, we didn't have a recycling program at all. Which when I first moved here, we didn't, to my understanding.
No,
because I came here in like 2008 or 2009, something like that.
Yeah, that would have been before it.
And then there is a recycling program through like CPWS that you pay some fee with them,
right? And
then you can get recycling. But now you're saying this Recycle Columbia?
With Columbia Public Works, with Recycle Columbia, you just, you get in touch. There's actually a little form on the site where you can request a bin to be dropped off at your address. It's picked up, I guess, every 2 weeks. You don't have to sort the materials. You just put all your recyclables in the same bin. The sorting, these trucks are actually driven to Marshall County, and it's sorted there using inmate labor. So I wanted to figure out how all this worked.
Sure.
And so, I've heard all this different talk from folks about, oh, well, I think it works this way. I think it works that way. Well, let's get away from I think. Let's figure out what we know, and let's go straight to the source. Let's talk to the folks at Public Works. And this is the way I'm planning to go about a number of issues. I was brainstorming with Mr. Dwyer. I wonder how we could. They need a truck that can help move their loads of recyclable materials to Marshall County, where they can have an extra 2 hours a day to keep their current pickup truck moving. And so we started brainstorming, maybe you could go the route of getting a truck through military surplus and retrofitting it to just be a haul truck to take
for the bins. Gotcha.
The bins of recyclable goods to Marshall County. That would keep your truck moving and maybe, would not incur a huge extra burden on taxpayers in the region. Or the sanitation fees might not have to go up as much as they probably will. So it was nice to be able to brainstorm with a person who's on the ground, seeing these issues firsthand in town. And we had a great conversation. And this is what I want to do with a number of issues, though. I want to get in touch with folks at the school board. I want to sit down with principals. I want to talk to the road superintendent. I want to meet with the folks that are tackling these issues day in and day out, see what kind of support they need from the state, and see how we can go about funding these things that where the first means of doing so isn't perhaps an unnecessary added burden on taxpayers. At every turn, I want to see what we can do through grants, private funding, whatever, maybe a reappropriation of funds that are already out there. I think that there's a lot of mismanagement. But I also want to be clear and say that whereas my opponents around here, I feel like are never going to ever mention the idea of a tax increase, I think we do have to be somewhat practical here and realize that in a town growing as fast as Columbia, you said earlier it's the dimple of the universe, and some folks maybe are still attached to this idea, but it would seem that a lot of people here want development. They want more jobs. They want better paying jobs. They want this advancement of our society, of our community. Well, if you want to have that piece of cake and you want to eat it too, we're going to have to increase our infrastructure across the board, improve our infrastructure across the board. And yeah, let's do what we can with private funding, with grants, with reappropriation of funds that are already out there. But you know, we may have to, in certain places, make some tough decisions. We may have to have some slight increases on this or that. It needs to be manageable. I want to hear what people have to say, but we're growing and we have to address it.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with anything you said there, really, but I guess it's my concern in terms of strategy is, you know, that might be the right argument essentially, but is it going to be an argument that's going to be a winning argument in terms of how you're facing your competitors? You know, and that's sort of to segue into that is that, you know, you're running against Scott Zipicki.
Sure.
And it was
Michael
Fulbright.
There is also an independent candidate.
Who is?
James Gray, I believe is the name.
Gray.
Not
familiar.
Unless if the name came out last minute. But
really? Okay.
Gray ran against Sheila Butt, I believe, twice.
I do know who that is. Yeah, he basically just writes himself in and gets 4% of the vote every time or something.
He got 27%.
Did he really?
In 2016, he got 27% of the vote.
Wow.
So a person who did almost no campaigning. I was looking at campaign finance, and I thought,
does that speak to her the vulnerability that she carried with her?
Well, I think it kind of speaks to the lack of options people have had in this area for a long time.
Yeah. Because I probably voted for him if I'm being honest. I don't recall specifically, but I would never vote for Sheila Butt for any reason. So by de facto, I would write in a ham sandwich. You know, I that's a running joke with me, by the way. But that really anything is a reasonable alternative to that.
Well, the goal here is to give folks an option, and you know, I've gotten the argument, well, you're not. This isn't really conventional. You're young.
Another goal that I think we're trying really pushing for, and ties back into your first question, and not to criticize you in any way, but to eliminate this attitude of just tribalistic thinking that people have around here, especially. Absolutely.
Well, that's sort of what I'm trying to challenge. It's really the whole point of the podcast.
This campaign to let everybody know that we are for you. No matter who you are, the side of the aisle you are. You are welcome to voice your opinion. You have a voice in us.
And you know, something that's interesting to me. The last time a Democrat ran for State House District 64 was 2012. Brewer. Mm-hmm. And, you know, got, 33.6%, almost 34% of the vote. Sheila Butt spent over $100,000 roughly, and Brewer spent, I would say, a little under $15,000 based on what I've been able to pull up.
That sounds familiar.
And, I mean, look at what a Democrat did then with very limited resources. Supposedly not a ton of support from the state level. People came out and they voted. Sheila Butt spent 9 times more money. And so...
And how is that looking for you, by the way, that picture? Because my understanding is that Fulbright is out fundraising either of you guys, and I have no idea about any of the others.
So in terms of campaign finance, I mean, we've used the phrase elephant in the room a lot, but I'll tell you, in my corner of the world right now, that is the elephant in every room I walk in, because everything has a cost. And what we're trying to do right now, I mean, we're hitting the ground running pretty aggressively because we realize that it unfortunately takes a lot of money to win a race. So we have some pretty aggressive goals.
Are you pulling down much support from, say, state level or anything like that?
I have met with the state party a couple of times. We have 2 campaign training sessions with the state coming up. They are offering monetary support. They are offering logistical support. They have been very accommodating.
Very cool.
So
good to hear.
It is good to hear. It is good to have some support from folks that have been in this game for a minute. They're inspired by this race. The state is. You know, they're so happy to have someone running down here, and I'm happy to do it. But it is not lost to myself or Tyler just how much money it takes to win something like this. But I'm not going to sell myself either. You know, in terms of to different interests. I know that.
So should I take it to mean you're not going to accept money from the NRA? I almost got through it without laughing.
You know, I can proudly say I will not accept funds from the NRA, and I'm already anxious to hear what the folks at the NRA have to say about me. But yeah, I'm not going after guns, but it's going to take a lot to win this thing. But we are about to hit our first goal for fundraising. We have had some extreme generosity from folks already. You know, we're in the process of ordering all sorts of different promotional campaign materials. My hope is that by the middle of May, along with Fulbright and Sapicki, you'll start to see Holmes for state representative signs around town. We've been just flooded with emails and messages, people wanting materials, people wanting a sign in their front yard. So we're gonna get out there, and it's a hard race, but I'm in this thing. You know.
So do you? I mean, and here's the super hard question, and it's almost unfriendly. Like, do you think? And here, because it's a legitimate concern of mine, because you know, after 2016, I was all about let's get some Democrats elected. Let's go. Let's see this blue wave. You know, we're seeing it in other places and super excited. But it's my big concern. Is a vote for you pulling a vote from our best chance at beating Sapicki, essentially? Because to me, and I said before the podcast, Sapicki is to me the least tolerable of all options, because he's Tea Party, he's partisan politics as usual, he's all of these things that I don't want to see as a continuation of the Sheila Butt sort of style. Okay, and I don't want that. Do you feel like you have a better chance that you can actually pull enough support behind you to actually win, or we're going to look at this thing and say, just like in 2016 with Hillary and Gary Johnson and the whole thing, and people going, oh, I don't like it, I'm going to go third party, and you're looking at these votes and the breakdown and going, if everyone had just gotten their act together, we wouldn't be living in Trump's America right now. Like, is this going to be a microcosm of that? That is my biggest fear.
So,
and how do you respond to that?
I want to respond to that, and then I want Tyler to respond to that, because I feel like you're going to have a pretty passionate response to this one too. I would say I'm not delusional. I understand that there's a lot at stake here. There's a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of votes that could be had. I think that what we're going to see, and I think what we are seeing right now, Sapicki and Fulbright are really in the heat of the battle right now. You've got two folks who are both by different parts of the community well respected and admired, established men in this community. But we'll see what happens with the primary there. I do think that in either case, though, I think I've already kind of been showing to people, I've surprised several folks in just the last few weeks of, I want to talk to everybody. You know, I've been driving around the whole district, and it's amazing that Southern Spring Hill, out towards Culleoka, you know, out towards Lewisburg, Mount Pleasant entirely. These are areas that haven't been campaigned in really at all. I want folks to know, hey, I'm not just running for Central Columbia. You know, I'm not just running for the people that always come out to vote in District 64. I'm running for everybody. We're planning to knock on a whole bunch of doors. And I do think that if we do our due diligence here, we get out, we get the vote out, we raise the funds we need to raise, I think we have a really good shot at this. But it's not lost to me that it is going to be a challenge. Something that was told to me the other day, though, a person, a good family friend said, you know, it's cool, it's cute and all that you're running, but when are you going to wake up and realize that you can't win? And when that was said to me, this has been said to me a couple of times. Every time I hear something like that, it makes that fire a little bit bigger and a little bit hotter. When I got off the phone with that person, I called about 10 donors, and 7 or 8 of them wrote checks. So I realize that this is very much kind of a story of an underdog right now. That's what it is. But we're coming out of the gate. We're running. We're going to keep running until November. And I'm planning on running up and down every street in this district. We have tons of people that want to volunteer. A flood of folks wanting signs. Our campaign kickoff is May 17th. I mean, we're trying to get the ball rolling here. I'm trying to invigorate a base of people that I would say in this district have been forgotten. Their interests have not been represented, or if they have been, they've been grossly underrepresented. So let's get folks out to vote. But that's my say on it. What do you think?
Well,
go for it.
A couple things. Well, for starters, we need to see who wins the primary before we start talking about whether or not it's unwinnable. But, and just to echo what AJ said, I've been kind of floored by how receptive people have been to the message we're trying to get across, especially both of us having grown up here. We know how it can be. And I think, and one of the things we've talked about a lot, and one of the focuses of the campaign is trying to, as I said before, make it accessible to everybody. You know, how do I phrase this? We want to, I lost my train of thought.
Making it accessible.
Yeah.
Because here's my thing, that since moving back to Tennessee, because I left for a couple of years after college, and I came back around 2008 or so, and since the first time Sheila Butt ran and was elected, and I saw her and I learned about her authorship of her books, which are Michael's Two Daddies, and how they're going to hell, and their kid's probably going to go to hell. And then the thing about the little Christian princesses and
biracial marriage,
the biracial marriage, and how that's horrible. You know, these things. I was like, this is completely. I mean, Samantha Bee, she does that show Full Frontal, whatever, and she did a showcase on. I think it was her and then Jeremy Durham, you know, Pants Candy.
Right.
That I'm looking. I was like, this is intolerable. We can't have, like, anybody, like, somebody tell me they're running and just let's go, let's do this thing, you know. And you know, for years it was either nobody, and then Seth Campbell, who's the party chairman in the county. You know, that he tried to run and he was in it too late and all this stuff, and it didn't work out in the last cycle. And so now here we are, and I'm like, let's go, let's do it. But like, I'll just be legit with you. Like, I've got concerns that are you going to be our best shot as a Democrat, because it's still such a dirty word around here, and because you're younger, you're new at politics. I like what you're saying. I'm agreeing with your positions here, but like, how does that play? Like,
well, let me tell you,
are you right, or are you going to win, or are you both?
If I may butt in, and
please do. Yeah.
I just lost my train of thought for a second. We want to deal with local problems that affect real people here, not issues that, you know, one state representative may not have control over, or there are already federal laws on the books that, you know, you might say, oh, you might campaign on abortion, how horrible it is, just as an example, but there are federal laws on the books for that. We're dealing with issues like AJ has been talking about this whole time that affect people here and are going to affect people here 10 and 20 years in the future. And not to name names, but the platforms of some of our opponents just do not reflect that at all.
No. When your suggestion for how you can help our schools, the extent of it is to put, in God we trust back on our walls, that's not putting more money in our teachers' pockets to help them out. That's not increasing classroom budgets. That's not fixing moldy ceiling tiles. Let's get down to brass tacks. Let's stop playing to this emotional fantasy. Let's talk about the facts. Let's talk about the problems. And I'll say this, the last thing about this specific question that I'll have is I got my petition on February 23rd. That's true. I didn't turn the petition in until the deadline date. I believe that was April 5th, because a couple days after I picked up the petition, I was fired up, ready to do this thing, but there were some job prospects I had with some employers in California. And I was really kind of going down this path, and I thought, okay, let's see what happens. I mean, let's roll the dice, see what happens. Well, that started to advance. And fast forward, I guess it was April 2nd or April 3rd. I'm on my way back from Murfreesboro one morning, and had been to an outing with friends the night before, and I get a call from the state Democratic caucus. And they say, hey, because I was thinking at this point about not running. I hadn't even really kind of taken the petition seriously at this point, because another Democrat had stepped forward to run. I was just hoping we would have an option. Well, I get a call that morning from the state Democratic caucus, hey, the other person who got a petition backed out 20 minutes ago.
And I think I know who you're talking about. But yes,
but I had
not to go down a rabbit trail.
I hadn't gotten any names on this petition yet. I hadn't appointed a treasurer. None of this. And I asked the person on the phone. I said, "Are you certain that there is not a person running as a Democrat in this district now?" And they called the election commission. They followed back with me, and I said, "Okay." And I halted, pumped the brakes on a few opportunities I had. In less than 48 hours, we secured double the minimum required signatures for the petition and got everything turned in. My whole reason for running last minute was to give folks a choice. So when you say you're concerned about having a choice, I would say that that was really the push in me doing this last minute anyway, was to give folks an option on the election day. But B, I know there have been so many folks that folks could suggest as a better option as a Democrat around here, but where are they? Why aren't they running?
Yeah.
So I get a little angry about it because I know I'm young and I'm running as a Democrat, and there's all these things that folks want to point out, and they're viable things. Point them out. But if you think there's a better option as a Democrat around here, if you really want to push for it, why isn't their name on the ballot? Do they not believe in it? Because I do. And that doesn't discriminate on age. I'm like,
sure.
I think we can get out there and do this thing. No, I haven't been involved in local politics for decades, but I almost think that makes me more qualified.
I was about to say that might be better.
And someone asked the other day, and I just told him, I said, hey, I'm qualified because I care. Beyond meeting the state constitutional requirements to run,
sure,
I care. And I want to do this thing. Yeah.
All right.
Anyways,
well, good deal.
A little hot about it.
No, that's cool. I admire the passion. I guess maybe the last thing I wanted to get to here, because we're coming up on an hour, is I mentioned to you before we came on. I had about, I think it was sometime last fall or so. We had a guy come on the podcast by the name of Dr. Gleb Sapersky, and he heads up what's called the Pro-Truth Pledge.
Sure.
And one of the things that actually intrigued me about you when I heard about your candidacy, you were talking about, sort of wanting to be a champion of what is true, over what is spin, what is misleading, the things that was being propagated by Sheila Butt and others of her ilk that were just falsehoods, essentially the real fake news and all this stuff. And this is what Dr. Sapersky set out to combat with the Pro-Truth Pledge, and he and I share this passion of wanting to encourage people who are in politics, who are either elected officials, who are candidates running, to take what is called the Pro-Truth Pledge, and that is essentially an affirmation that that you care about what's true, you care about what the facts are, and you're not afraid to challenge somebody either on your own side of the aisle, or which can be a harder thing to do,
sure.
To attack your own tribe, essentially, right? Or somebody from the other side, anybody, and also to be willing to accept, if it's been pointed out to you that something I said was wrong. Like here earlier, when we were talking about, said, oh yeah, that other guy was running against Sheila Butt. Oh, he got like 4% or something. You're like, no, it was like 27%. That's you checking me, and I have to acknowledge that, right? Sure. And I can verify that later, of course,
right.
Because I want to make facts matter again, right? That's I'm a big fan of that as a mantra. And that's what this is about. And it's something if you sign on to it, basically you become part of a database of candidates, of individuals. We're on there as the Fermenting Opinions podcast as basically champions of sort of taking this pledge forward, and we're all sort of here to check each other and make sure we're speaking truth and we're speaking factually. And
sure.
So I would like to now encourage you to sort of affirm that you would like to take this pledge as well.
I would love to.
Cool. Very cool.
When I wound up somehow on the front page of the Daily Herald, the quote that's in a big box in the article is talking about what our officials say should be verifiable. It should be able to be fact checked. Yeah, I believe that.
And that's exactly what inspired me to think about it with regards to you specifically. When I saw that, I was like, he basically sounds like he just took the Pro-Truth Pledge. Like, and when you do this,
a long time
and
ago,
I'll put you right. I'll put you in contact with him. Like,
okay.
And you have a website that's about to roll out here
So
the next couple of weeks.
We have the URL. We have our email account and everything set up, but the website is being worked on as we speak.
Gotcha.
So I'm hoping we'll have kind of the bones of it with some platform issues established, donate button, all that, up and working this week.
Very cool. Very cool. And again, I'm mentioning that in reference to this, you'll actually be able to take that sort of a logo that that you have signed on to the Pro Truth Pledge. That's something that it's like, think of it like, like a college getting accredited kind of thing. That you,
sure.
That you become part of this. You can also lose it. Like if you get called out a lot on saying things that aren't true,
right.
and you refuse to correct your behavior, not saying that you're going to.
Sure.
But like you sort of get that sort of seal of approval that you were on board with Pro Truth Pledge,
awesome.
and like you're one of many that are on there. I think people who are in office now, it's like there's over 100, and there's thousands of people who are just regular citizens, myself included, have taken the pledge because it's important. So I think that's really cool that you're going to take the pledge, and you can do that on Pro Truth Pledge. I think it's .org. So please check that out.
Yeah.
Is in the meantime, I guess because we're pretty much wrapping up now. Where else can we find you? Where else can we find about what you think and what you're trying to get out there to the public? Where can we find you?
I think the most accessible way to reach us right now is going to be the Facebook page. So if you get on Facebook, you can just search AJ Holmes for State Representative, or you can type in facebook.com/AJ Holmes 4TN 64. We're on Instagram as well. The handle for that is @AJ Holmes 4TN64. The website's going to be ajholmes4tn, and the email is going to be info@ajholmes4tn.com. So trying to keep things cohesive as much as we can. I did want to say, I know that this podcast will be out there for a while, but for folks listening now or soon, upcoming, May 17th, we're having a campaign kickoff party.
Very cool.
It's going to be lots of free homemade food. Going to have some entertainment. Going to have campaign promotional materials. We'd love to talk to folks. Whatever side of the aisle you're on, come sit down, eat with us. Let's talk.
Absolutely.
All right.
I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you guys for coming out.
Thank you.
Tyler, AJ. Really nice meeting you guys. Best of luck. I'm sure we'll be following up and seeing how you guys are doing.
Looking forward to it.
In the meantime, thank you for joining us here on Fermenting Opinions. Please check us out. We are on Facebook as Fermenting Opinions. We have a page and a group. We have our YouTube channel. You might be watching this currently on our YouTube channel. Is Fermenting Opinions by the same name. We're also on the web, www.fermentingopinions.com. And please check out our feed on iTunes and Beyond Pod and a bunch of other places. And also special thanks and a shout out to Ross James and James Media for making this all possible via our digital wizard, Ross James.
Thank you, Ross.
Yeah, thank you, Ross. In Ross we trust. And as always, thank you for joining us here on Fermenting Opinions, and we'll catch you next time. You guys take care.